come up to the front. My name is Stefan Recke. We're excited to share about space entrepreneurship. Who here is involved in the space business? By show of hands. A couple people. What we're going to do is we're going to try to make this an exciting panel. I'm going to call it like an unpanel. I have a bunch of questions I'm going to ask, but actually I'm going to think the best way to do this is, first of all, we want to make sure your questions are addressed, whatever you have, but then I want to have the panelists ask each other questions as well. So real quick, so I'm the executive director of GEN Space, and our mission is, just like GEN has country managers and ambassadors for whatever 200 countries, I'm helping manage the location of space to do business. So there's a lot of intricacies. People think they're involved in doing business in space, and what we want to talk about today is how do you overcome some of the barriers, obstacles, what are the lessons learned? So hopefully you're in the right room, and it's space, not office space. A lot of people think that it was office space at first. Remember that one time they thought we're doing WeWork, but we're not. So real quick, so let me jump in to let the panelists introduce themselves quickly, and then maybe say one or two things about why you're in the space business. We'll start with Samantha.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Hi. I'm Samantha Talbot. I'm happy to be here. I'm the founder of Vinci. That's my company, VNCCII. I'm a creative, but I'm in the space industry because I'm interested from a space philosophical point of view. I'm an artist in residence at Interstellar Foundation, which is a registered nonprofit inspired by Carl Sagan's work, The Golden Record to Space, as you would know, in the furthest deep space object in terms of telling the human story. And I'm interested in communicating that from a creative lens. I also wrote a science fiction book that's going to the moon at the end of the year via NASA's Astrobotics Griffin lander mission, and it will be preserved via nanofiche, which is a space-age archival medium of storage analog, which is meant to last hopefully billions of years in space. So happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Steve Wolf. I'm the president and co-founder of the Beyond Earth Institute. It is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank based in Washington, D.C. We work on policy issues that relate to and help to accelerate human presence in space. And that's what kind of gets me really motivated. I'm also the Deputy Executive Director of the Global Spaceport Alliance, and representing some 38 spaceports around the world that function largely as hubs for business and ecosystem building. So there's a close relationship here with Jen in that regard, and I'll talk more about that later. I'm also finally an author of The Obligation, and it's my take on a philosophical take on why humanity is so interested and intrigued and desiring to go into space and to fly into space and create new civilizations out there. So certainly encourage anyone who's interested to look more into that. So really excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan.
Hey, I'm Brandon Seifert. I'm the founder of Stipe Group, a specialist analysis and consulting group that focuses on strategy for deep tech companies that are going through their scaling stages. And we also work with investors, too, to help them make sure that they're investing their money in the right type of technologies and the right kind of companies. I've been a co-founder. I've been an early stage employee. I've been a scale stage employee. I have worked with investors, advising them, as well as helping them with their deal flow and diligence. I've been all over the ecosystem in the space, the deep tech space in general, seen it from all different sides. So it's always a treat for me to be able to come to this conference. We've been coming here for years now. When we first launched Gen Space back in 2016, 2017 in Istanbul. I don't know how many of you might have been at that conference. I know you were there, yes. So excited to be here again, talking about what we're doing and meeting you folks.
Hi, my name is Matt Voss with Near Space Launch, the president of the company there. It's a 10-year-old space company. It's flown 100 satellites in orbit now. We're just celebrating our 1,000th item on orbit this coming summer. So we're excited about that. Really helping new companies and new groups fly first things in space for the first time. So how do we get someone to orbit, make it more accessible to all? We also launched Near Space Education, which is a group that takes some of the technologies from Near Space Launch and let schools and others go to space as well. So that's our nonprofit that we work with. Really enjoy crossing a lot of different ecosystems. We get to see a lot of new technologies that are being flown. Love entrepreneurship. We work with a lot of other groups that are doing a lot of cool ideas. So yeah, thankful to be here.
Great. Well, thanks. So Gen Space does three things. So we connect, we advise, and inspire. So share with us quickly what inspired you to get involved in space, please.
Oh, that's a big question. Well, space is everything. We are one human family on spaceship Earth. If you look at it from a philosophical framework, I mean, that's the big kind of philosophical questions. And so when you have that realization and that kind of awakening, then you think about where we want to evolve to as a human species. How do we be that bridge to the future? What a treat to be not only human, but a creative in this framework of reality in today's day and age, because we can inspire. We can influence change. We can be causal agents. And that's, I suppose, when I discovered that, that became my North Star, no pun intended, for my mission for Vinci, which Vinci is also my alter ego superheroine character, like a Luke Skywalker of an entire franchise I'm trying to build, like a Star Wars, but it's native to this culture and zeitgeist with the intention to help with the overview effect, which is Frank White's philosophical perspective of having that profound realization when you go to space, how fragile the Earth is, and we're one human family. So if I can share that through creativity and space, then I'm on mission.
Awesome. Steve?
Yeah, I have been inspired by space from a very young age. So I'm part of the Apollo generation. Yes, I know I don't look that old, but I am. So I remember that. And really, even when I was in high school, I remember talking to my guidance counselor, who told me he didn't necessarily think I had what it took to become an astronaut. And my attitude was, I don't care if I have to sweep the floors at NASA. I want to be part of this future, So ultimately, I wound up settling. I couldn't get a job as a janitor, so I ultimately got involved in politics. I settled for that. So it's been a great 40 years for me.
Yeah, I actually got started on the space sciences side of things. So my undergraduate degree was in astrophysics, and so I spent years working in more of an applied physics type area. And the more that I got to learn about what was being invented, what was being engineered, how that was transitioning from technologies that were being experimented with and into things that were actually being deployed into the world and used and even productized, the more I became aware of the entrepreneurial opportunity of space and the opportunity to build a business and create jobs and reach other people around the world and make money and do that in a big and sustainable and scalable way. And so the thing for space, the thing about space for me, it goes back to that childhood element, like most people that are working in the space industry, but it reaches beyond that, even into something that is tangible and relevant and applicable and equidistant from everywhere on Earth.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I've had a couple different angles there. I think I love the thought of dreaming big, just like, let's imagine what can be done. I think we've seen some sci-fis, some of us here. I always loved those growing up. I also was blessed to have, my dad was working in the aerospace industry, worked for Lockheed, different places like that. So saw it at a younger age and actually get to work with him as well now with New York Space, which is a treat. Really to see, there's a really neat, I love entrepreneurship. I have started a few businesses, so bringing those two passions together are just so much opportunity to grow and challenge in space. And it's definitely a hard area, but you can iterate and grow into it more. And so it's just a lot more accessible than ever. And so I just seen a connexus of a lot of different ecosystems starting to emerge in the space industry, and more people joining has been really exciting the last 10 years of the company now. So yeah, there's a lot of different reasons there, but loving the fact that we can dream big together and build a new future together. And so depend more on how we bring this about is going to be exciting to talk about.
That's great. You mentioned the word challenge. So maybe, Brandon, can you talk about maybe a challenge or a significant challenge that you had to overcome? Because this is part of the Founders Track. So.
Sure. Yeah, so I've personally experienced this. I've been around other founders that have experienced this, other teams, other companies. It's very easy in this industry for folks to get excited about the mission or the project or the science or the engineering, very excited, or very easy to get excited about the technology and forget about the fact that again, in the context of what we're talking about here, you're trying to build a business. You're trying to build something that will generate revenue, sustain itself, grow, solve problems for other people, and isn't just an exciting one-off trick. And that can, in some circumstances, just be like a relatively consequenceless thing to forget. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm just a student, or this is an early stage experiment or something. That's okay. I'm just going to treat it like an experiment. But at a certain point, after you've raised $10 million, after you've raised $100 million, after you've raised $1 billion, you're at your Series B, C, D stage. You have a responsibility to do something with that money and protect those jobs and not let your venture fall apart as just something that was an exciting gimmick. But that happens all the time. So seeing that, recognizing that, catching that early, learning lessons from other people, it's really hard to do.
Anyone else want to jump in on challenges?
Sure, plenty of challenges. I think for any
only
business,
one challenge though. We can only win on that point.
Keep it optimistic, right? I mean, yeah, you gotta love it what you're doing, and I think we've been blessed to work with quite a scattering of different space companies over the years as they're trying to merge and put stuff on orbit, and just kind of I think there's different emphasis on different groups that come in, and so I think a challenge of making sure your tech is ready, but also parallel trying to make sure there's people that want your tech. Because if it's a disruptive technology, are people really ready to receive that after it's done? It might take a couple of years before they can put it into the architecture. So I think there just needs to be a multi-ball juggling, like in entrepreneurship. And even so, you can't spend all your time on one area. And so, yeah, you get to diversify, and that brings challenges with time and effort. So, yeah.
How about that? Look, go ahead.
I can add a little bit to this. I think from relating to the timing as it relates to failure. So in the history of commercial space development, before Elon Musk, right? So everyone knows Elon Musk, but before him, there was a whole series of commercial space rocket companies that tried to make a go of it and are sort of left and failed. They failed, and the only reason why Musk succeeded largely was because the timing was right. The situation in Washington had changed such that NASA suddenly became willing to work with private launch companies and provide them seed money so that Elon could develop his rockets, and then once he developed the rockets, NASA agreed that they would purchase them. That was a sea change for NASA, and if they had had that policy a couple of decades earlier, we would probably be much further advanced than where we are. So timing is right, and also where is the government in all of this? That makes a huge difference.
And also ESA did a great job too with their business incubation centers, and the space agencies were adopting that. In terms of policy, Steve, in terms of policy or government, are there any gaps or funding you can talk about?
Yeah, and this, you asked me this, you gave me the question in advance, and it's really one of these, it depends, right? So where you are. So if you're in the United States, if you're in the UK, Japan, you have a fairly good opportunities and networks to access seed money through NASA. You get SBIR, Defense Department, and they have the Defense Innovation Unit. So there are ways, and there are communities that are supporting space startups, right? And so there are investors that are out there that are willing to put money into it. So it's and government generally is supportive of it. In the UK, you have what they call space clusters. They have 6 space clusters around the UK where they're specifically trying to drive space entrepreneurships, their space economy. Japan just announced that they're putting aside $2.2 billion over the next 10 years to support new space initiatives. Through the Global Spaceport Alliance, again, these are spaceports that are popping up all around the world, in countries that are recognizing that the economic value of space can make a huge difference to the country or the region's economic viability in the future. so that's a good thing, right? So if you're in a country, though, what that all is saying is that the government, to what extent the government is identifying space and supporting space and creating the opportunity, creating a positive environment, working with the stakeholders, working with the investors, and helping to build up a workforce, right? So you need who are the entrepreneurs? Where are they coming from? How are they being educated? How do they understand? It's not like you're building a sandwich shop, right? You need a certain degree of technical ability. So, I mean, is anyone here from a country, say in Africa? Anyone from Africa or from Asia? Yeah. So, I mean, Africa is starting to get involved here as well. So, it's really about working with it's not to say that the government can always do more, right? So they could invest more money in this, but I think it's really about what's going on in the region, also at the state and local level. So you should be working with state and local governments to help to create this environment.
Great. And for those of you that have been to the past GECs, we've always had 3 sessions, one for founders, one for investors, and the other one for government stakeholders and actors like that. So, Samantha, inspiration. You're obviously inspired, and you've shared that.
Thank you.
How do you see people get inspired by what you do?
Yeah, I mean, it all interconnects, right? I mean, we all have different areas of expertise and represent different stakeholders, but there does need to be that North Star, that inspirational piece. My focus is on the youth and the younger generations. We need to inspire the youth to have a hopeful future in the sense of getting into STEM, or I like to say STEAM, because I'm also an advocate for the arts, because it is the human story. But the sooner we realize that we are one human family on Spaceship Earth, that we can expedite the youth in the sense of feeling that they have a place, a sense of belonging, not only to their country, but to the earth, and to find their unique superpowers at an earlier stage. And I think there's a lot of room for opportunity as well in the education system to inspire the younger generation. So what I try and contribute through my art and creativity is the storytelling factor through science fiction. But I don't even like the name science fiction. I'd like to say science futures, because I'm a world builder. Think about the term Imagineers, imagination plus engineering. I got into this as well because as a kid I would go into like the Tron section of Disneyland theme park, and I was going, this is so futuristic, which then I discovered Daft Punk's music. So it was a unique way of discovery, but it was through a sensory experience. So imagine going to Cape Canaveral and you experience a positive prototype community of tomorrow, and what does that look like from a technological framework, from an energy framework, from a policy framework. And so that's the power in creativity. We are world builders of tomorrow. Through real-time digital simulations, you can come up with these prototype communities of tomorrow.
Awesome.
Can I riff on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. No, because I think what Samantha's doing is so important, because NASA and other folks are so interested in STEM and how do we get the young folks interested. It's really and yes, I remember going to the World's Fair in New York City when I was 4 years old, and seeing the wonders of the future. And I think that was the first time I was certainly sparked by that. But each generation need their own kind of inspiration. And I think the kind of inspiration that Samantha represents is really what's going to get the younger generation thinking about space. And once you start thinking about space, then you can come back and say, okay, where do I fit in this larger space community? Am I a startup? Am I an engineer? Am I a business person? Am I a marketer or a creative? So I'm really excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, all of this reminds me a lot, or makes me think a lot about what you've been up to and the experiences that you've been having with your group, especially as you've expanded out into other parts of the world. Can you share a little bit more about what your experience has been like, seeing how inspiring it is to help kids in other places around the world actually put satellites in space, learn how to build it and launch things?
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing to dream, and I think that's inspiring. I love, and I have a question for y'all after this, but the Dream Big mission of what we're doing right now is we're working with a lot of students internationally and locally on how to build small satellites, but also do how to balloon launches. So I think what you said earlier is that there's an ecosystem in space. Some people think, oh, you have to be an astronaut, but really helping give exposure of like, hey, you can dream of be involved in space, but do it differently than what you expected, and crossing these different worlds. And so we expose them, and also just building confidence, like, hey, you built something that went to orbit, and let the kids see what that could be, and make them dream up of what they want to put in orbit, make them go through the scientific process of, PDR design reviews, and actually meet with other engineers and kind of expose them at an early age to actually reach space and make that available to them. And so we've been able to work with a couple different countries and do how to balloon launches, and we're all about iterational approach. So kids have to, go through first making a little Arduino or microbit. It's something simple, very practical, but they're working on that with robotics, but then also tied to how to balloons, and then move into a spacecraft. And so kind of give them building steps like you would through any problem solving. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey to challenge some of the kids to work through that, and we've learned a lot through them too in that.
And personally, my kids went through the NASA Hunch program, which was amazing. It's actually solving problems that the astronauts are seeing on the space station, and they actually get to send something to the space station. So that got me exposure to NASA and the ISS. We have time for questions, and I want you guys to think about questions because we want to make sure that this is an interactive panel. So I have one kind of final question, and let's start with Matt. In terms of, this is the founders track, right? And in terms of not just the challenges, but what are the things that have really driven you for your success for your company? What do you think the biggest factor is why you've been successful?
Well, it's a really good team. First of all, the people on the team is a multi-generational team that has approached the problems from different angles. Some have some great experience. I like to say they're a bunch of talented stallions that we're all just trying to go the same direction. A lot of great partners that we have. It's a lot of collaboration, so we have different partners that we are collaborating with to really bring the full story to actually get to orbit. And then, yeah, we've had time to incubate. So we had a long time to really try out our product to fit for a long time in the R&D stage before we kind of forward into bringing it to the market, and just listening a lot. So we had some pivots because the industry's changed a little bit, regulations have changed, so you have to be agile enough to be able to adapt to requirements as it's going about throughout the last few years. So it's still learning a lot, and I feel like I used to say drinking from a fire hose, but now I say a waterfall. So we're always learning more, and it's been a fun journey. So,
cool. How about the rest of you? How do you guys define your success in whatever the mission is? Whoever wants to go.
Success in my world, which is about, I'm in the realm of convening. So I'm bringing together stakeholders and to talk about how do we advance the entire segment of space, whether it's through spaceports or through the technologies and the means by which humans will inhabit space, LEO, the moon, getting to Mars. And so for me, it is, and you mentioned having good people, but it's how many people are we bringing to the table, and I've been fortunate that we've brought a lot of folks together around our missions, my two organizations.
Great.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you caught the opening session yesterday or the part of the opening session yesterday where they had that panel that was being moderated by the governor, and they had the CEOs from the other companies there. That really struck a chord with me, and that's been a point of conversation over the past day as well, because I can't tell you how many startup conferences and entrepreneurship conferences that I've been to, and it's always focused on who's the new company, who's the new startup, who's the new investor, what's new, and it never really stops to think about or talk about what has continued to survive, what is still working, what is still growing, what has been around for several cycles, economic cycles, or several up and downs or whatever, what is working. And so success for me is making it to that next stage, and then again after that, and again after that. It's figuring out how to operate in a way that isn't so entirely focused on just making it to that next milestone. It's about thinking about the one after that and after that. It's this bigger sense of follow through. So finding your venture, finding your project or your startup in a place where you're allowed to think about your future in a more sustainable way, I think is success to me.
I think success for me is more legacy work rather than a startup and a quick exit. I think with the Vinci project, it needs to take on a life of its own. So it will be something like an artifact that will last hopefully millions of years, but also it will evolve with the youth and the generations, and they'll take ownership of that work, and they will become active co-creators and participants in the space industry, but also being like a human citizen on planet Earth and being more conscious about that. So I'm just here offering being a causal agent and storytelling through all forms of media to communicate a really powerful message. And when that is received by the youth, they will be inspired to recognize their superpowers and find their role and their place. And we think space industry is just an industry, but really the reality is it's everything. Everything is interconnected. Like, we are on one planet Earth, everything's a living ecosystem, Gaia, everything's connected. So no matter what role or what industry you're in, it still contributes to space, because we are a human civilization. We want to protect the planet, but we also want to think about large space migration in the sense of human colonies off planet, and what does that look like? How do we evolve as a human species along with AI, which is a big question, and also become conscious creators within the planetary ecosystem we call Earth.
So we're all young at heart and curious about this, and actually, not to pick on Teddy, but Teddy wants to be a pilot, or you're aspiring pilot, right? So hopefully we inspired you to get more involved in space, and we're accessible to that. So we're open to taking questions. Does anyone have any questions? Because
Linda Smith with the Global Business Angel Network. Thank you all for your comments. We read a lot in the media about junk in space, all the stuff that's supposedly up there. Do we need to worry about that part of our environment? And if not, why not?
Be afraid. Be very afraid of space junk. No, that's an extremely important question. It is an existential issue when you're talking about the space and expanding into space and doing more things up there that we want to do. I do think that there's sincere progress being made in terms of identifying all of the objects and pieces of debris that are in space, so that it can help us avoid that junk. There are very interesting companies that are coming online that are actually going to go out there and grab those pieces of junk and remove that. That is a multi-decades process that we need to get started quickly, and also ensuring that anything new going in space has an exit plan in terms of its end-of-life use, and making sure that doesn't turn into more debris that's staying up there. So, but you guys might have.
Yeah, so I co-founded a space company that recently went through an exit that was being built to address part of that issue. It was an orbital transfer vehicle company. We did rendezvous and proxop services, so a satellite servicing company. And it's a real problem. Is it something that you need to lose sleep over right now today? No. Like, if you went up into orbit, would you see all this junk? No. But it is one of those things where it could very quickly go from 0 to 1, or from nothing to something. It's a catastrophic type problem that you can't always predict. And so right now it's a problem of preservation, of conservation, of prevention, about taking some responsible action in order to make sure that the environment continues to at least stay where it's at. Ideally, improve it, collect some of this junk. But that's a hard engineering problem. Space is big. It's hard to collect a lot of this stuff, let alone find it. So yes, it's a problem. Yes, we're working on it. Confident that this is something that can be prevented, but no guarantees, and that's why it needs to be a continued conversation.
So we put a lot of stuff in space, so maybe we're making some space junk, but no, we're trying not to. And I think it's just the maturing of a market, right? So I just, you go back to you only have to compare to, when the airplane was first made, they didn't have as much tracking, but then collisions, it's got more traffic and collision. So there just needs to be more responsibility, a lot of R&D, previous generations, and as this new, we get Starlink coming up, we have other countries putting on a lot of neat satellites up. And so how do we communicate? Because it's also a complication is, you're going 17,000 miles per hour in the low Earth orbit. So you could, if there's a collision, it's going to cascade and spread. So there needs to be responsibility of what we have. We need to shrink our conjunction window so we know exactly where your satellites are at. So we're trying to work on making a black box for space, which has a quicker connection to your satellite so it can shrink down. We know where you're really at. So we're working with the 18th Squadron and NOAA. Those are the ones trying to figure out from the U.S. side, working with ITU and partners internationally. How do we work with our partners and also communicate well so with those collisions doesn't hit one and hit another. So there's a lot of room up there, but as we try to share orbit planes in certain spots, there does need to be a lot of thought through engineering through those. So it's going to be a lot of coordination and policy put together, along with commercial needs to work and come partner with that and make sure we. And there's a lot of new technologies coming out that was shared. But hopefully we are all building around the world together and responsibly. So.
Any other questions, please?
Okay. Hi, my name is Darcy Barr, and my company is Plan and Process Consultancy. Thank you for your comments today. My question for you is of interest to any founders in here. I'm currently strategizing with NASA, mostly out of the Kennedy Space Center, the OSBP programs, and helping startups. They want to breach the space. They've got products. There are a lot of ways, and NASA, I believe, does a good job at offering founders and startups, a little bit of education. The disconnect that I've been witnessing, I've been studying them for a little over a year here, is that there are many businesses like myself that are there to support the infrastructure. It was mentioned earlier that you do have a business. So they become very honed in on their product and supply chain and getting that out there, and lack a lot of basic business things. When I am speaking with the director there in Florida at KSC, she was saying you'd be surprised that once we say it's a go, just how much work has to go into making sure that company is actually ready to handle the business. So my question for you is whether by experience or just what you would advise founders that do not have a product, that do not have research, and maybe are not educators, but many other skills, and they want in.
So it absolutely takes a village. Anybody who feels like you need to be an astronaut or need to be an engineer to do work in the space industry, I've got good news for you. There are many different kinds of positions available. Again, you need everybody: creatives, artists, operators, business people, finance people, everything. But in your specific context, the first place that my mind goes when I'm talking with someone who wants to be a founder in this industry, or someone who is an emerging founder, or someone who's beginning something, especially if they are coming from a technical background, or if they're coming from the kind of environment, maybe like you're meeting some folks through NASA, I try to remember, or try to remind people as they are wrapping their heads around basic founder lessons, that problem solution fit is not product market fit. Excitement for your technology or excitement for your product is not the same as demand. Like I was mentioning earlier, it's very easy for folks in this space to get wrapped up in excitement and to be thinking about these big grand visions of what could be, and to lose a sense of reality or tangibility in what they're working on. And so folks who can figure out how to develop the ability to discern between this is cool, this is exciting, this is neat, and there's something real here, there's practical value here, this is a solution that could solve someone's problem and could solve it in a way where they would pay for it. Therefore, you're transitioning from that problem solution fit into the product market fit. Being able to suss those sorts of things out and make those kinds of discernments, I think is a superpower at an early stage for anybody looking to get involved in the industry or become a founder. Being able to figure out, is this business, is this technology, is this team working on something that actually stands a chance of making money, of getting paid, of being real. It's very hard to do, actually.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I think, the Valley of Death, I'm sure you're researching that, just like, and there's a lot of new groups coming out of that where, there's a lot of good funding opportunities for SBIRs, SIBRs, to kind of start your phase 1 and phase 2, and then there's new groups there from SpaceWorks on trying to solve this problem, how you then integrate that now into the architecture of the space systems and jump from those research dollars into actual manufacturing or production and making those happen. And so that is a tough area that's trying to be figured out. Acquisition is a very complex issue. Your company not just only has to have a good product, but it has to have a good cybersecurity, it has to have a good accounting DACA processes, it has to have, the list goes on as far as what you need to have in your wheelhouse of tools. So just picking up those balls and making sure you're having those while you're developing your product with those research dollars. So when you're ready to go past that next step, when they say, hey, let's use this technology in our fleet, then you're more ready for that. So it is a couple things you have to be juggling and move forward on from just what we've seen in the short answer, but agreeing with what you're saying there.
Great, thanks. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you. The question is, what network exists? Is there a way for a founder, let's say there's a technical idea as well, is there a network that you can get feedback from, get, feedback or overall?
Yes, us. Gen Space is a network that can absolutely talk to you about that anytime. We're right here for the next few days, and we're always available to anybody involved in the Gen network or adjacent to it. But even beyond us, yes, there are many, and we can talk about that in more detail afterward. There's no shortage of community. It is just figuring out how to break into it. Yeah.
And we also like to invite you to a reception this afternoon or evening at 5:30 at the Taft Center. We're having a space networking social. Matt, being part of the local ecosystem, is excited. I think this is the first of its kind in the local area to keep that going. So we're very open to being contacted. Look us up, genspace.co, and again, that's what we're trying to do. So any more questions? Or
Thank you. Hi, Michael Angela. I'm an investor at High Alpha. And I just would be curious from your vantage point. It's easy to get myopically focused on the spacecrafts themselves and the hardware, the visible hardware. But as those of you that are evaluating the entire value chain that it takes to make this whole ecosystem operate, and then what are some of the tangible and also nearer term opportunities that are current gaps or current challenges that may not be the obvious kind of hardware vehicle solutions. I'm sure that there are other kind of software and other products that are needed in that value chain. Can you articulate what's your framework for thinking about the whole range of solutions that are needed, and where are some of the particular gap areas today?
So the way that I've approached this generally in the past is to, and you're probably familiar with this if you're already investing in the space. But I like to begin to break things up into buckets of, is this startup or is this project a space for space business, or is this a space for Earth business, or is this an Earth for space business? So is this business going to be developing a technology, productizing it, and doing something on the ground that is pointed up towards space or supporting something in space? Is this going to be operating assets on orbit or somewhere else in space and providing value back down to Earth, looking back down to Earth, transmitting something back down to Earth? Or will it be operating in space and providing a service or generating value for other assets already in orbit and looking outward as well? So I like to start with that. But then you can take it much deeper and like, well, let's focus on the ground segment. Let's focus on the Earth for space bit. And the best way to approach that is maybe more from an engineering perspective or from an operations perspective, and think about, well, everything, the dividing point between Earth and space in this context is launch. So what are all of the things that have to happen leading up to launch for a spacecraft? And that includes everything from the design work and the engineering and the education and the planning and all of that, all the way through basic logistics and storage and delivery. And I don't know how well you may or may not be plugged into things like Space Safari through SpaceWorks, part of the Space Force right now. But overhauling the ground-based like launch logistics chain is a huge area right now, huge field. Government's dumping a bunch of money into that, and it's not as sexy or as exciting as launch or constellations or things. So it's been overlooked for a long time. A lot of opportunity there. We can talk about that more afterward as well too. But yes, there's a lot of overlooked opportunity in the greater space market right now.
And to emphasize what Brandon's saying, we are available to, after this session outside, we can cover more questions. For the sake of time, we have a couple minutes left. If you can give yourself, or maybe people that you're just meeting today, one word of advice on how to do business in space, or maybe something that you can think about that you could have done better, what would that be? And maybe start with you, Samantha.
Okay. So the question, one piece of advice.
One piece of advice, whether it's something you could do better or something that you've enjoyed. Just one piece of advice, either to yourself or to someone in the room.
It's very simple. Love what you do, because it's going to be hard no matter what you do, whatever area of industry you're in. It's going to be hard as a startup, and so you got to be able to be passionate and have some North Star, some sort of vision that will get you up out of bed in the morning. Let's be real. And when you're facing operational challenges or whatever challenges, you can go back to the original mission statement. You need those strong values and foundational pillars to weather any sort of storm. That's real talk.
So it's love and passion for what you're doing, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Steve?
Get to know your local politicians. Develop that relationship with government and the agencies, because they can either make you, help you, or they can really hurt you. So develop that relationship early and maintain it over time.
So build a fan base in politics. Is that right? Okay, great.
Be open to change. If you're going to be building a startup in this space, you're going to be working on that startup for 5, 10, 15 years. You're going to be raising a lot of money. You're going to be meeting a lot of people. And the technology that you're going to be working with and the understanding of your market is going to change. Your requirements are going to change. Your markets are going to change. And you need to be able to be dynamic and responsive to that. So be open to change.
Resilient?
Nothing is sacred.
Resilient?
Yeah. Resilient, yeah.
Awesome.
A lot of great words. I'll do a generic one here with curiosity. I think it's going to be a constant state of 1,000 questions, and each question unlocks another 1,000. So I think, just even after you start fitting what you need and trying to laser focus, still be curious of those around you and what's going, because there's such an ever-changing environment. It feels like in the last, especially more recently, but it's gone through cycles of change. So curious.
Curiosity, great. So we have a minute left, and just want to quickly put some summation in. So hopefully, coming into this room, that you've seen and heard from this amazing panel, that space is not just for rocket scientists or astronauts, right? It's really for dreamers and innovators and founders like you. So hopefully, maybe as a result of coming to this meeting today, you'll be able to start a space company. Again, GenSpace is there to help support you. Just wanted to quickly thank our great panel. Thank you guys for coming in, to taking away from whatever you can take away from today. But really, space is not hard. We want to say that the basic principles of entrepreneurship apply to astropreneurship. It's just the location's different, right? Obviously, there's changes and challenges associated with reaching space. So thank you guys. Let's give them a great round of applause. And thank you guys. We'll be here, we'll be outside, so find us, and hopefully you can come to our reception as well.